Pepe, let me bring up what Donald Trump said about his latest talk with European leaders. Here
Sure.
is what he said, Pepe.
France, we spoke to, and Germany, and UK, all very good leaders, very good friends of mine, and we discussed Ukraine in pretty strong words. And we'll see what happens. I mean, we're waiting to hear answers before we progress.
Pepe, considering the national security strategy of the United States, which Ukraine case is not a priority for the United States anymore.
Sure.
And
Sure.
how do you see this sort of confrontation between the United States and Europeans in Ukraine?
Well, Nima and all of you, if you are not in Europe, you have no idea of how many serial heart attacks have been going on for the past 10 days or so, all across the Brussels axis and in the main capitals, in London, in Paris, in Rome as well, here nearby. And of course, because the doctrine, let's call it the Trump doctrine, even though, and I posed this question already in my column that is coming out probably later after our talk on Sputnik International in Moscow. I posed the question and we had a discussion about it because I was too explicit, and they say, look, you cannot say that because they're gonna come after us big time. Basically, I was saying that Trump was not capable of writing this doctrine, and he's not, because he's not a strategist and he doesn't read anything, so he can never come up with a conceptual document like the national security strategy. So who wrote it? Nobody knows. Obviously, the Secretary of Forever Wars, Hegseth, is not capable of writing something like this. Not to mention Marco Gusano Rubio, who can barely point to Myanmar in a map, or China for that matter. So somebody wrote that, and we don't know who did, which is already a big problem. Second issue, which is even more interesting, the complete debasement of Europe. Europe has been relegated not even to the beggar's banquet table, adjacent to the big table with the big guys. Europe is like an afterthought or a nuisance for the Trump doctrine. The only thing that Trump and his circle expect from Europe is get your defense budget to 5% of your overall budget, buy all our weapons and pay with your euros, and basically shut up. And if you want to go with your forever wars, it's your problem, not ours. I do a concise breakdown of the main points and the shift of strategy. Theoretically, we don't know if they're going to pull that off. This is what they say they're going to do. And don't forget, the Empire of Chaos is a specialist in building narratives and changing narratives. So we don't know if this new narrative, disguised as a national security doctrine, will be followed. If it's going to be followed, then expect big changes. And the number one is absolutely no doubt the role of ultra mega sub vessel now to be enjoyed by the European Union and, of course, all the European NATO partners, which will be valued only by their monetary contribution to NATO. And that's about it. The other very important point is, of course, I would say the theoretical normalization between Washington and Moscow. We don't know that yet. This is what they say they're going to do. They don't talk in detail about a normalization in terms of spheres of influence and in terms of coming to an indivisibility of security pact between Washington and Moscow, which is what the Russians were trying to impress to the previous American administrations in December 2021. And there was no response. And 2 months later was the start of the special military operation. So normalizing theoretically U.S.-Russia relations, possibility of investments, hefty investments from the American oligarchy, in fact, in business with the Russian oligarchy. And that's very important because both oligarchies want to do business with each other again. And this is a major incentive behind Trump, or behind who wrote the strategic doctrine. But inbuilt even in the language, in the terminology, there are some hints that this is only one part of the strategy. The other part of the strategy is to use, I would say, carrots to the Russian oligarchy to start aligning with American interests or American values, let's put it this way. And this, in short, middle, or long term, would provoke a split among the Russian oligarchies and go against the Kremlin. Obviously, they don't say that in these words, but this is how we should translate it. And of course, when they talk about security, inbuilt in this terminology is they can use cyber security or cyber terrorism to provoke minorities in the post-Soviet space or even inside Russia against Russia. Translation. Preachers online preaching to Tajiks, already expats in Russia or planning to go to Russia. And Russia takes this very seriously. They know that they are Salafi, Wahhabi, so-called online cells, Tajik cells, operating in and out of Russia. And this is a big worry. And not only Tajiks, it could be Georgians, it could be Azerbaijanis, it could be Kazakhs. So the Russians have to be very careful because attempts to destabilize Russia, even hybrid war terms, will continue, even with this so-called normalization. And the third point is Latin America, Nima, which is, wow, the situation is dire for what the Americans call Western Hemisphere, translating into real world terms, Latin America. They want their backyard back. The whole thing is not only Venezuela. It's Venezuela. It's Colombia. Colombia was threatened by Trump a few hours ago. It's Venezuela, it's Colombia, it's Mexico, and it's Brazil, the most important nation in Latin America, which happens to be a BRICS member. So the overall strategy of the Trump administration, which is a hybrid war against the BRICS, doesn't change much, even with this so-called normalization with Russia. Because China, everything that is in the new international security strategy points to China, points to the containment of China. And most important, probably the most important point of the whole strategy, it's an attempt, not very sophisticated, but quite obvious if you read the fine print, of provoking a split between Russia and China, which is impossible. Why? Why trying to provoke the split? Number one, because Trump, let's say instinctively, because he's not a strategist and he doesn't read and he cannot think in conceptual terms. His instinct may have told him that he cannot fight a war simultaneously on two fronts against the Russia-China strategic partnership. A military war in Ukraine, which is already lost, by the way, and a tariff, commercial, trade, tech war against China, which China has everything on its side to win, even short term. So what's plan B? Let's attack the considered weaker nodes. That's where the global south comes in, and that's where Latin America, Western Hemisphere, Monroe Doctrine 2.0 comes in. Secure our backyard. Just extract a lot of money from the European vassals. subordinate security in West Asia, the former Middle East, to that toxic couple, Israel, Gulf petromonarchies. So in the case of Israel, would be enforcing the Abraham Accords, and in the case of the Gulf petromonarchies, they will be enforcing counter-terrorism in West Asia. The notion of having Egypt, Jordan, and the Gulf petromonarchies, or Doha and Abu Dhabi, enforcing counter-terrorism is a joke in itself. But okay, but that's what geopolitics is nowadays, right? So these are the main points. And coming back to the main point, if you cannot fight a frontal war against Russia, China, the next best option is what else? Coming back to the Roman Empire, divide and rule. Try to split Russia from China, containing China and trying to isolate Russia by other means. And of course, very, very important, trying to blow up BRICS from the inside. And in the last few hours, we had a confirmation of that directly, Nima. The US wants to dissolve the G7, and they want to create something called the Core 5, C5. C5 would be, according to the Trump administration, United States, Russia, China, India, and Japan. What is that? Blowing up BRICS from the inside. Simple as that. They would like to create a mechanism, a C5, that will be more important than BRICS, even though it contains 3 BRICS. So why you create C5 and you have the US and Japan side by side containing China, you try to isolate Russia from China, and you try, of course, to provoke splits between Russia and India and China. So it's, as you can all see, it's not a very clever strategy, but this is all that the Americans have at the moment, the Trump administration has at the moment. And it's quite clear what they plan to do. It's a sequence of divide and rules. Once again, the hybrid war against BRICS continues, but now it's on another level. And it's, okay, we're going to split them from the inside and going to try to clash, get one to clash against the other. Very, very dangerous, to say the least.
The U.S. national security strategy, everybody's talking about it, and some sort of changes, important changes, you see in this new document. What is your understanding of the new document, and how much of, difference do you see when you compare it to the previous one from the Biden administration?
Oh, it's let's start from the end. If comparing to Biden administration, it's revolutionary, actually. It's revolutionary not only from Biden administration, it's revolutionary from any type of the national security strategies which has been ever produced in the post-World War II period. And obviously we have to wait and see how far it gets in practical terms. But the most significance of this document, not in what it tries to accomplish practically. We know that most of it probably will not see the really light of the day. But it's in the fact that it indicates that there is a strong faction within Trump administration which understands the situation, and they understand their basically the conundrum which they find the United States in, and that is one of the chapters there in the what is called fuller version. We didn't see it yet, but number of the media outlets saw it. The full, long, so to speak, national security strategy is the fact that hegemony is not achievable. It never was. That's what I've been preaching for almost 20 years. That these are all delusions. It was created by neocons, and so the fact that it's being repudiated now. It's like, wow, even this fact of those words, that they have been produced from the White House is revolutionary because essentially it reduces the United States to where it is. It's just another superpower with at some point of time grossly embellished, grossly exaggerated, well, BS, especially from neocons and liberal interventionists. All of them are essentially neocons, and the United States simply doesn't have resources to do anything. They would love to, obviously, now to concentrate on the Western Hemisphere, but that's the whole other story. And but the fact that there's revolutionary things there, like creating the strategic stability between Russia and the United States and cooperating on the number of, it's like, wow, dude, this is and of course it is essentially admission that Europe is done. So it's the United States is simply shuts Europe off because Europe has no future.
When you look at the document, it seems that they're somehow accepting the reality of the war in Ukraine and going on in Ukraine. On the other hand, Andrei, you see when they put China as their enemy, it doesn't go that far. Why is that? Do you think that they're trying to somehow, separate Russia from China? Is that the same?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing. And many people do not understand that Russians can see through really easily, So, yeah, it's all attempts to, kind of, especially today with Tucker Carlson quip, which he recorded in the video that, which is true, by the way, that United States and Russia actually are closest friends, should be closest friends and are natural allies. Yeah, actually, Russia and the United States were supposed to be closest allies. But, well, the time is over for that. And but it's kind of like afterthought that, oh my God, what did we do? But it is all about it's in the main vein, so to speak, of the anti-Chinese politics or policy, if you wish, within the United States. And there are all kinds of factors which influence this, including the fact that if those people understand what happened in Europe, they understand that China economically simply won, period. It's a monstrous economy, gigantic, largest economy in the world by far, and nothing they can do. So, they lost the time. Remember, Vladimir Putin was asking, hey, let us join NATO. So Russians asked at the start of NATO, let us in, But strategy is like a gravity. It's not a pleasant thing when you do not know how to do strategy and understand what you are dealing with. So they didn't understand it. And in historical terms, they miscalculated so much that, yes, Europe and European civilization is pretty much over, and it's a subservient, vassal, whatever it is, structure. European Union will disintegrate. It's de facto is disintegrating, and this is just the start of the processes which doomed Western civilization as the hegemon for the last 500 years.
Andrei, you still see in the document the policy of zero-sum game.
Of course, that's American way.
Not the policy of Russia or China.
No,
they see partnership. They see common ground.
Yeah, that's the American way, and it's gonna take some time getting unused to the fact that somehow United States can dictate some kind of conditions it can't. It doesn't have resources or ability to do so. Again, United States remains superpower for a number of reasons. Obviously, the scale of the economy, it's a large economy. It's second economy in the world, definitely, although declining dramatically, and it has been deindustrialized catastrophically. But still, it has a large population. United States has resources, a lot. So it just doesn't matter how they United States and Canada, of course, which is the whole other story, they handle this. But and of course, it's a nuclear power, and it's a major nuclear power, second nuclear power in the world. And but they still think that they can play zero-sum game. They can't, and they never could, actually. So, and even the chapter which says hegemony is not achievable, How about that? Let's start from there. We can build from there, we can dance from there and get into something positive. So, and this is still American old habit, to judge itself as the, preeminent everything, the greatest thing, in history. But the reality is, United States has to, basically accommodate itself to the realities where it's just another power, major power, so, and it has to live with that and then try to play not zero-sum game, but to carve for itself the niche, which it can, obviously, and it will be afforded, this niche, and after that, we should be in a much more stable situation.
Yeah, you've mentioned that it seems that after releasing this document, Europe is in some sort of panic.
It's shock. Yeah, they're shocked.
Yeah. And here is, what the NATO Secretary General said. It shows the panic, by the way.
Yeah.
Russia's next target. And we are already in harm's way. When I became NATO Secretary General last year, I warned that what is happening in Ukraine could happen to allied countries too. I fear that too many are quietly complacent. Too many don't feel the urgency. And too many believe that time is on our side. It is not. The time for action is now. Conflict is at our door. Russia has brought war back to Europe. And we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured. Imagine it. A conflict reaching every home.
Yeah, it's somehow.
He's an idiot. He's an idiot. Yeah.
The desperation is just.
Yeah, he's an idiot. Most of the NATO political top and military top are imbeciles. And so, yeah, you have to look at it just, it's a panic. And those slogans are funny at best because you're looking at essentially, for example, France is turning into a third world country. So is Germany. They don't understand. United Kingdom is not even on the horizon. They have their residual, technological expertise because they used to be one of the great, actually, air power, and they had the capabilities, especially in commercial and combat aviation, which is gone, but still they retain some. If you look at Rolls-Royce, for example, okay, same goes for France. But other than that, look at them. They are. So, and they got the message that we don't need you anymore. You are merely, they are lunch, period. United States needs to eat too. NATO is United States. That's it. Lord Dismay, obviously he was British, British love to all kinds of figures of speech and, but he was very correct when he stated about NATO that NATO is created to keep us in, Germans down and Russians out, So while the problem is for them now, Russians do not want Europe. That's the thing which they don't understand. The whole task for the Russian army, for example, of cleaning their stinky Paris, from rats and toilets and the Russian engineering corps going there, is like terrifying for Russians, So let them get into, live in the sewer. So, and be done with it. Militarily, they are insignificant. It's pathetic. And so, because obviously NATO is United States, always was. And so now that United States says it, just go screw yourself, buy weapons from us. So, sure, okay, well, let's go. Live with that. Nothing they can do about it.
The new document, which is important, in my opinion, is a drastic change in the attitude, in the way that the United States sees the whole situation with the conflict of Ukraine. The new strategy, Trump's new, security strategy, national security strategy, is pointing out, what is totally different from what we know from the British one. The British, they're talking about nationalism, they're going in this globalist idea of what we want to do with the case of Ukraine, as Ukraine be the first priority of Europe still. And on the other hand, you see the new attitude in the document on the part of the American and on the part of the Trump administration. They don't see Ukraine as a viable choice to continue with, and they want to change their attitude toward Russians. What is your understanding of the new document, and how is it different from the European strategy?
Well, as far as we can read it from the British strategy, it's the same. It's the same thing as always. It's a nicely dressed up globalist policy, which is committed to Ukraine. They don't care about Ukraine. They weaponized Ukraine as a weapon against Russia. So this is what they cannot give up. They are still committed to regime changing and partitioning Russia, balkanizing it, to eliminate a powerful rival in their quest to establish or re-establish hegemony over the Eurasian landmass. This is the same Macandarian strategy that goes back more than 100 years. The United States national security strategy for this year, by contrast, is a sharp turn from the status quo, because up until then, the United States was completely on board with the same globalist strategy as the rest of Europe, as their allies, let's call them, with the exception that the United States was shouldering most of the burden in terms of finance, in terms of weaponry, manpower, cannon fodder. It was all mostly resting on the American shoulders, and I think it's natural that at a certain point the American people will get tired of it. So, last year around November, people had the choice of continuing the same policies with Kamala Harris or changing. And so the only alternative was Trump. So they elected Trump. And so far, Trump, in his own unpredictable style, which is vulgar on the margins, let's call it that, is actually delivering. And I think that this national security strategy document that was just published is practically a beginning of a Cold War between the United States and Europe. And we've seen very, very hysterical reactions on the side of Europe, because one of the things it says, we can't have this NATO alliance that continuously expands. That's there. And for the Europeans, NATO alliance expanding is basically their fixation. They want Ukraine still in there. If they get Ukraine in there, next they're going to want Georgia in it, and Moldova, and Kazakhstan, and whoever they can get into NATO, the thing will try to continue to expand. So the Americans said, okay, no more, we're not interested, goodbye. And then the document also explicitly upholds the Monroe Doctrine. And so I think that it may be that what we're seeing now in Venezuela and the war of words against Colombia, that may be part of that.
Yeah. Alex, focusing on the situation in Europe, we know that there was a meeting in the United Kingdom. They came out, it seems, with a counter proposal to what the United States has proposed. And how far would Europe go against the United States in Ukraine? Are they getting to the breaking point? Is that sustainable for Europe to continue?
You're saying against the United States?
Yeah, because they're coming out with a counter proposal because they don't agree with what the Trump administration put in that document. They want something else. Even it's amazing to see Zelensky is talking about he cannot accept territorial concession. This is the hardcore. This is the basis of the negotiation.
The European counter proposals are always calculated so that war continues. This is their priority, for the war to carry on. So the counter proposal is no territorial concessions and Ukraine still has the right to join NATO. So that's already on the wrong side of Russian red line. So that guarantees that war continues. And Ukraine is losing the war. It's getting destroyed in the process. They're losing something between 1,000 and 2,000 troops per day. And these people are doing everything they can to continue the destruction of Ukraine and killing of all these troops. It's ugly. It's unconscionable. And it puts the Europeans in a direct conflict with the United States. Now, how far will they go in that conflict? I don't think they will go very far because they cannot. So, we've already seen warnings out of Europe that, well, if the United States insists on this peace, then we're going to dump $2.4 trillion of U.S. treasuries. And if you dump all these treasuries in a short period of time on international market, it will collapse the price of U.S. treasuries. It will push up the price of U.S. interest rates, and with it the cost of funding the American government, which is already, just to service the debt, just to service the interest on that is $1 trillion a year, which is more than $3,000 per man, woman, and child living in the United States. That's just to gain their right to exist to the bondholders. And now, you would push all this much, much higher, probably exacerbate inflation in the United States, jeopardize economic growth. So a very, very ugly, potentially very painful blow to the United States. But, Europeans have done a number of mistakes with venting these threats. They've shown themselves to not just the American public, but the world public as the lead warmongers. Because, before Trump, they were all pretending, we are blameless. We are just loyal allies of the United States. We follow the lead. And it's the Americans who are leading us into all these crazy military misadventures around the world. And now Trump says stop, and they are completely losing their minds. They want the war to continue, and they're doing everything, including threatening the United States in order for them to give up on the peace negotiations. But, the stupid part about it, so, they mark themselves in the eye of the American public as the enemy, in fact, and as the lead warmonger. So now that becomes clear and undeniable. But then what they're also doing, I don't think they understand that they are threatening a power that has much, much bigger way of hurting them back. So let's say you dump all the U.S. treasuries and you collapse the price of U.S. treasury bonds, and you hike the interest rates on the global markets, and so forth. Well, the Europeans need U.S. dollars because this is still the world's main trade settlement currency. So if you want to import oil, gas, coal, coffee, whatever you buy on the international markets, you need U.S. dollars. And to get U.S. dollars, you need to acquire them. European banks already have serious issues with US dollar liquidity. And for this reason, the Federal Reserve Bank has set up a liquidity swap lines with European banks, so that if they run out of dollars, they can draw on these swap lines from the Fed. Well, Fed can cut this off overnight, and then no more US dollars. And that could bring European international trade to grind to a halt. Then what are they going to do? Sell in euros? Are they going to force other countries to use euros as a trade settlement currency? They're going to say no, pay us in gold or pay us in our currency. And so that's going to collapse the euro. It could spike up the interest rates in Europe. Like, basically, it would be a boomerang, but you throw a boomerang force 1 and you get boomerang force 5 in your face. And then, Trump is already looking for any pretext to hike tariffs on his trading partners. And, since the beginning of the Trump administration, the people around Trump have treated Europeans with a certain dose of irritation. And now this gives them, the justification to say, what did we say, 15% tariffs? No, wait, it's 500%. How about that? If they can get away with it, they will do it. So I think that the Europeans are acting like hysterical lunatics. And the mask of, culture and civilization has flipped off completely. They can't seem to let go of their colonial heritage. And they think that everybody in the world owes them something. And the United States owes them to continually do the dirty work and the heavy lifting at their own expense because of our values, our shared values, because we're so nice. We're so, we're the garden. Everywhere else is a jungle. That's the mindset, not necessarily of the ordinary European in the street, who is also increasingly oppressed to the breaking point. This is the mindset of the governing establishment in Brussels, in Paris, in Berlin, in London, and so forth. And these people are very, very low caliber politicians. I have to share this story, Nima, because it's just amazing. Somebody finally put together a 15-minute video on YouTube of Kaya Kala's greatest hit. Okay, her various statements, and it's not 15 minutes of Kaya Kala, it's maybe half, and then the guy comments. So apart from her being staggeringly dumb, what you notice, like we hear her give a statement, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and so forth from time to time, right? When you get her 15 minutes straight, you realize that she consistently speaks like daddy's princess. Her tone of voice, her gesticulations, demeanor, it's all like daddy's princess, like she always talks like a little girl. So not only is she staggeringly dumb, she's also revoltingly annoying. And I could not listen to the whole 15 minutes of this video because it got so annoying. But that's the caliber of leaders that we have in Europe. And it's not by accident. They were chosen to be clueless, stupid, and reckless, because you had qualified, competent leaders once upon a time in Europe, but they were slowly purged out of the system. And one spectacular example was German Admiral, I think his name was Kai Arno Schonbach, I think. When the war started in 2022, he was in India on some international defense-related event, some conference. And at that conference, he was saying, well, this crisis between Russia and Ukraine, the lowest cost solution is to simply recognize Russia's security concern, to treat them with respect, and to find a solution without waging war. He was sacked the same day. He tried to apologize, he tried to take back this word, but too late. They needed some mindless drone moron, apparatchik there, who when they tell him go to war with Russia, he'll say, aye, sir, go to war with Russia. Tell them that they have to sacrifice their children, aye, sir. And then, the guy goes and tells the French public that they have to sacrifice their children. That's who rules over Europe today. And that's the reality. And the good part about this is that these lightweights are opposed by very competent and very professional leadership in Russia, in China, and in the United States.